Hello, everyone. If you could just give us 1 minute to get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Cooking Connected. My name is Jordan. Joining me today, we're just getting our camera set up. I apologize. Joining me today is my coworker, Sajwa, as well as one of our volunteers, Julia. So both Sajwa and I are program coordinators with the Cooking Matters program with the University of Minnesota Extension. And as I said, Julia is one of our lovely volunteers. So today, normally a Cooking Matters class is a nutrition-based 6-week cooking class that meets once a week for 2 hours. Classes normally feature a nutrition educator and a chef that work together to teach our participants how to make a healthy, delicious, and affordable meal. Today we are going to be following that same format. We are going to be making an easy pumpkin soup, which is really great for this lovely fall day. We would like to thank the creator of this recipe, Grace, with thekitchen.com. So we will have links for the recipe both in the description and all of the descriptions of our videos. So check out thekitchen.com for this recipe. So Julia will be our chef and Sajwa will be our nutrition educator. Just like every week, we do have another survey for you guys to take. We did post that in the live chat, and it is also in the description of our videos as well. For this survey, you will need a program code, which I have right here. This week's program code is E097583. And again, that link is in the live chat as well as in the description of our videos. So please take our survey. It really helps us to make our videos better and continue this work in our community. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Julia and Sajwa. Take it away, ladies.
All right. Thank you so much, Jordan, for that lovely introduction. Yes, so let's do a quick recap of the recipe we're going to be doing today. We're going to be doing that pumpkin soup. Chef Julia is going to be demonstrating that for us. So I'm really looking forward to that. And just really quickly, one of my favorite things about this recipe is being able to incorporate something that's in season right now. I know we've talked about this before in this series, but eating in season is a great way to make sure you're saving money. You can promote local farmers and be able to eat a lot of local foods. And then you're also able to get vegetables and fruits at the peak of ripeness. So their flavor is just going to be out there. It's going to be really tasty. What's your favorite part about this recipe, Julia?
Well, what I love about this is just that, sometimes in fall you just want like a nice creamy soup, and I don't have a blender. So this recipe is going to achieve that nice, thick, kind of rich feeling without any special equipment.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great thing to keep in mind. It's going to be a flexible recipe for everybody. So why don't we get started with that? I guess first, do we want to do a review of all the things we normally do in a Cooking Connected episode is, washing our hands. You do want to make sure that you wash your hands for 20 seconds. You can sing your ABCs, or you can sing the happy birthday song twice. And you want to make sure to get in between those fingers, around your wrists, and underneath your fingernails. Those are all very important spots to make sure you're hitting when you're washing your hands. And then secondly, you do want to make sure your space is nice and clean and sanitized. Clean meaning we've wiped away any visible debris or dirt, and sanitized meaning we've used some sort of disinfectant to get rid of any bacteria that might be on the surface. So I see that Julia has already gotten everything prepped, and even look at her mise en place.
Yep.
It's all out and ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and get started with today's recipe.
All right. So like Sajwa said, I did already get my hands washed and I got all my space set up. So my mise en place here, it's super nice for me personally just to have everything ready to go. I don't have to be like scrambling around my kitchen looking for things. Everything is just right here, ready to go. So with that, the first thing that we're going to do with this recipe is start to saute our vegetables. So with that, it's just an onion and garlic, which really pack a lot of flavor into, these small little packages. So I'm going to start with the onion here, and I did already rinse it off. And with this, I'm going to use this method of holding my knife, which is the favorite for me what to do. So I'll show it up on this camera here. So what I'm going to do is pinch the blade with my thumb and forefinger and then wrap the rest of my fingers around the handle there. And that just gives you a lot of stability. You know, sometimes I see people holding knives like this and it's just seems like it's going to flop all around. So I like to hold it like this. It's nice and sturdy and stable. And let's get started with that. So with the onion here, another thing that I want to talk about is the claw hand. So if you've been watching this for a little while, you know what the claw hand is. It's just so that we don't cut our fingertips off. So what I'm going to start with doing is just getting this onion cut up. The recipe calls for 1 onion, but since this onion is so huge, I think I'm only going to use half of it, and I'll save the other half for another recipe. So what I did here is I just cut it in half. I left the stem end connected. And then what I'm going to do is start with slices this way. And what's going to end up happening is this kind of separates the whole onion. And then I'm going to do it this way and create a nice little dice. I think after that, I'm going to still even go in and do a little bit more. Because like I said before, this recipe is supposed to be a creamy soup and I don't have a blender. So I'm going to try and do my best to get the onion to almost a pureed state with just my knife.
Yeah, with this technique, you guys, you're going to be able to get a real nice dice with a lot less work. The beautiful thing about onions is that they naturally have those divisions and those circles, and they naturally connect in that way. So cutting in this method, you take advantage of that, and that does save you time as you go.
When I get down to about this stage where it's getting a little bit harder to hold, I like to just flip it on this side and do kind of the same thing, because then I feel like I'm gonna risk my fingers getting chopped off a little bit less.
That's a risk we don't want to take here.
Right, exactly. So I'll just pause aside here. And then, like I said, I'm just gonna go through a little bit and give this a little bit more of a finer dice.
Sure.
Well, this is actually more of a fine chop. This here, this kind of rocking motion is kind of what we normally think of for a chop. And that it gives you a lot of stability again. I'm just holding my hand on the point end of the knife, just holding that down and rocking back and forth. That's a really good way to utilize like this kind of knife where the blade is curved. Some other knives have the blade being straight, and those are better for a chop motion like this. But for this kind of knife, I really like doing this rocking chop.
Yeah, it reminds me of the similar chop that we do when we're mincing our garlic. Of course, like we're not going to get as fine as a minced garlic, but having that one hand on top to balance and the other one to hold, and then just doing that rocking motion, which takes a little practice in the beginning. So when you're first starting off, feel free to take your time and go easy with it. But after a while, it becomes second nature.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at, I think. So forgive me if I forget to mention some things. All right, so I think this is looking pretty good here. And I'm just scraping everything into a nice little pile again, so I'm not wandering all over the cutting board. Okay, so that is looking pretty good. I'm gonna start my stove now. This I'm just gonna do like a medium heat. I think that'll be pretty good to just get our onions going. I'm gonna end up adding the garlic in there too. So I'm just gonna use a little bit of olive oil here. The recipe calls for 2 tablespoons, but I don't measure a lot, so I'm just gonna do a glug or 2.
Yeah, I find that I do the same whenever I'm adding oil to a pan, especially. I just kind of eyeball it.
Yeah, exactly.
But
it doesn't need to be perfect.
That's if you're comfortable in the kitchen. I understand that not everyone's at that comfort level. So
Yeah, and I kind of know what it looks like in the pan. So, all right. So for this is a way that I like to get things from the cutting board into the pan. I know some other people kind of scoop it up with the knife in their hand, but again, that's just getting the blade closer to my hand that I don't think is necessary. So I like just scraping it in like this. All right, and while that gets started, I'm gonna work on the garlic a little bit.
Awesome.
So for this recipe calls for 3 cloves of garlic. Some people that might be a little strong, but for me, I do love garlic, so I'm gonna go for all 3.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just gonna separate 3 cloves off of my head of garlic here. And then a really good method for getting the skins off. What I'm gonna do is just kind of smash the clove, so that'll separate the skin from the actual garlic. So with that, I'm just gonna take my knife, put it flat on there and give it a good press. And I make sure that the blade is facing away from me when I'm doing that. So if I accidentally slip, it's not gonna go into me.
Mm-hmm.
And that just loosens the skin enough to be able to peel it right off.
And we hope you guys are saving your skins and onion scraps, all those things. Hopefully you're saving them for your vegetable broth bags. We say that in every video, but it's just such an easy way to make a broth. It doesn't even hurt to do. So you might as well.
And it saves money too, because if you make your own broth out of these scraps that you would otherwise be throwing away, then you don't have to spend money to buy a broth.
Right. Yes. And oftentimes I find it to be a bit more flavorful. I really like the extra flavor that you can get from something you're making your own, because you do have that liberty to, add or change or remove certain things. That's the beauty of being able to cook and being in the kitchen.
Yeah, and if you don't really like certain vegetables or certain flavors, then you don't have to put those in.
Mm-hmm.
So with this, I'm just slicing the garlic because I am going to go through it again, so it doesn't need to be perfect right now. Just going to get it in smaller chunks so it's easier to work with.
Even though Julia is working with a smaller item like the garlic, I want you guys to note that she still is practicing her claw and just like making sure to tuck those fingers in. I do find sometimes when I'm working with garlic, especially if I'm at this step, I have to be extra careful, take my time definitely, and really practice tucking in those fingers. Because the beauty of that is, your nails, not that we want to be cutting our nails or scraping on them, but that's a protective barrier that's naturally occurring there that you always have with you. So, you know what I mean? It would be better to come up a little closer to that than on just like the tips of your fingers. Not that we want to get close, but it's just a nice safety tip. And so I want to point out that she still does that, even with a small little clove of garlic.
We have a viewer here that says she often uses a microplane on her garlic.
Yeah, and that's a really good thing to do too, especially for something like this where we're trying to get it as fine as possible. I don't know if everybody knows what a microplane is. I actually have one, so I can kind of show it off. This video is not sponsored. But so this is a microplane grater. It's just pretty much like a really, really, really fine cheese grater. I'll show it up on this camera too.
Oh, thank you.
You can see how it's really tiny. So that gets the garlic very, very small pieces. And the smaller the garlic is, the more flavorful it's going to be too. So really breaking down all those cell walls helps release the flavors of the garlic.
I really love like learning new kitchen hacks that you can use. There's so many like kitchen tools that come out nowadays. So I really appreciate you guys sharing those with us, especially as we're, doing these different shows. I remember my favorite one that I've learned about so far was the tofu press. Jordan, I believe you actually showed us that one, and that is so cool. So, I mean, as you get more comfortable using certain ingredients, if you're a big garlic user, a big tofu user, it might be to your advantage to, grab one of those kitchen tools and practice some of those kitchen hacks and use them in your cooking.
I'm getting a little bit of garlic eye here.
Yeah, after working with the garlic and onions, you have no choice but to be a little teary.
Yeah.
But the flavor
Control
makes it worth it.
Okay, so while this is cooking, I'm gonna start in on our thyme. And this is something, again, that if you don't have access to the fresh stuff, you can get dried thyme, and it's pretty much, it's gonna give you the same effect. Not quite as full of a flavor, but definitely the same effect. So the only thing to note is that if you're using dried herbs instead of fresh, you need to reduce the amount. So this recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of fresh thyme. So if I was gonna substitute dried for that, I would probably do 1 to 1.5 teaspoons instead of the 2 tablespoons. So it's a little bit less than half the amount.
I'd also like to note that in plenty of recipes that I've done, when they call for something like thyme or oregano, I have substituted Italian seasoning in for that. I do find that seasoning mix, it has those herbs in it anyway. And because I use it so commonly in almost every recipe, it's something I always have on hand. So if you don't have thyme specifically, you could use that Italian seasoning.
Yeah. Or another thing, if you have other herbs that would probably work really well in this too. I think sage would be really good in this if you've got that laying around. And so for this, you can see that the thyme grows on a little stalk here. So what I'm doing to get the leaves off is just kind of holding it at the top end and just kind of scraping down, and that gets a lot of the leaves off. And then I'll go through and just kind of pinch off what doesn't come off naturally like that.
So an activity like this would be a really good thing to get the children involved with. Having them work those thyme stems or work any fresh herbs that you might be incorporating into your dish. And that does open up the opportunity to talk a little bit about the value of adding herbs and spices and how that can help contribute to flavor instead of just using salt. So I know we've talked about this before, but we are trying to watch our sodium levels out there. Miss Julia did an awesome job last week's video telling us all about that. And when you incorporate those herbs, you're getting so much flavor and so much variety and so much depth to the recipe that you really don't need as much salt as you think. And it's also very helpful to just sprinkle a little bit of salt at the end of your dish after it's done cooking, maybe just before you're going to eat it, because then you'll be able to have that intense salt flavor and you won't need as much. So please keep that in mind when we're working with salts and stuff. We're not saying it's bad, not at all, but we just want to have it in moderation.
Another thing to keep in mind with that is that you can always add more, but you can't take it out.
Yes.
So
yes. Mm-hmm.
One of our viewers said that they would probably add a pinch or two of nutmeg to this recipe as well, which might be a really great addition.
Yeah, and the recipe actually does call for ginger, which is another one of those kind of sweet, warm spices. So I think nutmeg would fit right in.
Yeah, nutmeg would be wonderful. As soon as you said that, I could just taste it like, maybe a little cinnamon, depending on how savory or sweet you want to go with this pumpkin soup. Had pumpkin soups on either end of the spectrum, more of the savory kind, more of the sweet kind. It's really up to you. And again, that's the benefits of being able to cook it yourself.
Exactly. Okay, so now that I've got all the thyme leaves off of the stems for the most part here, I'm just going to go through and give it a little bit of a rough chop. And this isn't something that's necessary. for thyme. I just like to have it dispersed a little bit more out throughout the soup instead of, having a big bite of just a thyme leaf. Now, if you're using rosemary or something that's a little bit more hearty, this step is less optional. Rosemary can sometimes feel like little sticks in your mouth if you don't chop it up. All right, so that is ready. I've got all my other spices measured out here, ready to go. So this was part of my mise en place. So here I've got some salt. This is the ground ginger, cumin, and cayenne pepper. And again, with this salt, it actually calls for 3/4 of a teaspoon, but I'm going to start with a little bit less than half a teaspoon and just see how I feel after that.
Yeah.
So for now, I'm just gonna, I think the onions and garlic need just another minute here. So.
Okay. Well, while you're doing that, I am going to get a little bit of nutrition in there. And Julia, feel free to interrupt me as you need. You know how we do here. So I just want to talk a little bit about vegetables. There are actually 5 subgroups of vegetables. So those subgroups include dark greens, we have red and orange vegetables, legumes, starchy vegetables, and then there are others like mushrooms and such. And so, it's recommended that you reach and tap into all of these different subgroups of vegetables. Each subgroup does provide the body with different combinations of nutrients, and all of that works together to provide a real healthy overlay of what you're eating. So if you wanted to include some dark greens, I would recommend something like spinach or broccoli. You could also do something like a kale. All of those are examples of dark greens that would be good to include. And then, like we're using in today's recipe, we're using pumpkin and then also carrots. That would be with the red group, red and oranges. Then we have legumes. We've used plenty of beans and peas before. Starchy examples would be something like potatoes or corn. And, those really work well with digestion and providing a more lasting energy level. So keep that in mind. You would want to have that. They'll help you with satiety and feeling fuller longer. And then also I did talk about mushrooms already. So try incorporating different pieces from all of these subgroups. We really want to have that variety. We talk about eating a rainbow, and this is one of the reasons why we do that. So pumpkins, we're going to be using a canned pumpkin today. They do fall in that red and orange group, and they provide a lot of vitamin A, which is going to keep your tissues and skin healthy and prevent against cataracts. I know that maybe you've heard that, eating carrots will help you with your eyes. That's kind of related to where that comes from. The pumpkin also will provide vitamin C. So we're boosting our immune system and lowering the risk of certain cancers. And then we have vitamin E as well, which is going to be preventing lipids from damage. Also, vitamin E is good for like your hair, skin, and nails. You're going to be getting some potassium in there, which lowers blood pressure and really helps you with your muscle contractions. So I know that last week we did do the shepherd's pie, which also included a sweet potato. That's another example of something that would be in the red orange category, which is in season right now. So try to incorporate that as much as you can.
All right, so I think the onions and garlic are getting to a good point. So I'm gonna add my seasonings now. So I like to add this and just let it kind of chill in the hot pan for a minute. That really does bring out even more of the flavors, especially of like the cumin. Kind of toasting that is a really good way to extract some of the flavors. So while that's sitting there, I'm just going to open up our can of pumpkin. Turn my heat down a little bit here. So with this, and any cans, it's good to just wipe off the top of the can. Make sure that you're not going to incorporate any bacteria or anything in your food. Because if it's on the top of the can, you have this blade sticks from the bottom or from the top of the can into your food. And so you don't want to add any undesirables in there.
Yes, and Julia is using a canned option. We love talking about the differences between having fresh, frozen, and canned fruit and vegetable options. This is a really great option if, for example, you don't have a blender, and you're not going to be able to take that step to blend, or maybe you don't have time to take the step to carve and mash a pumpkin. This really will cut off some of that prep time with your meal. But if you did have that time, you could get the children involved and, bust out that pumpkin. And this would be a great way to show them that pumpkins aren't just for display. They're also for eating, and talking a little bit about those nutrient benefits that I talked about earlier, the vitamin A, C, E, the potassium, even the fiber, and how that helps lower cholesterol, helps us feel full. All of that is going to be very helpful, and you can really use this as a point of time to talk about that with the kids and get them in the kitchen. It's all in season, not just pumpkin, but squash as well. And I know that if time allows us, we will be having a little bit of a demonstration on using squash. And we can talk about different ways to prep that, especially with it coming in season. I definitely see us using a lot more squash and pumpkin and sweet potatoes right now.
Absolutely.
And they're also shelf stable. That's the other thing I love about these types of root vegetables. You can buy one and keep them for a while, so you don't have to worry about them going bad on you too quickly.
So we do have a quick question. Right now, pumpkin is not on the shelves, but it's missing on a lot of different shelves. Is there something else that you can use for this recipe?
Yeah, so we mentioned the canned pumpkin. You could also use squash. That would work really well with this. I know that, when we were ordering groceries for Julia today, Jordan was sharing this tidbit with me, but we were ordering groceries and they didn't have any pumpkins available. So she actually was able to get this can of pumpkin from a neighbor. And we want to give a shout out to that neighbor for supporting Cooking Matters and Cooking Connected. So you use
soup with her.
Yes, you're gonna have to share some soup with her. But you could incorporate a squash as a substitute. I did talk about sweet potatoes earlier. If you bake those and take them out and mash them, I could see this becoming a sweet potato soup. There's a lot of variety with that, and ways that you can incorporate that. And also if you wanted to, I could see taking some carrots, and if you did have a blender, making a little bit of a puree and using that, which could stretch out your soup. Let's say if you didn't have a lot of squash, or if you didn't have a lot of pumpkin available, that's another option I see as a possibility.
Yeah, I think that would go really well in this.
Mm-hmm. And it's a great way to sneak in more vegetables into your food. I love doing that, cutting things up small, blending it, pureeing it. Any way that you can get those vegetables in there is a great thing. Awesome question. Thanks, you guys. Any other questions? And any other questions, but also if there are any other recipes with vegetables and produce that are going to be coming into season right now, we really would appreciate that, and would be happy to demonstrate some of those recipes for you guys here with Cooking Connected.
All right, so my pumpkin and my spices have been in here kind of warming up, toasting those spices a little bit, like I said before. So the next thing we're going to do is to add the broth. And so for this one, I am using a boxed broth. Sometimes, you're going to have to do that. So if you can find a low sodium version, that is probably going to be your best option. For this one, we couldn't find one. Like we said, we were having some difficulties with the groceries this time. So it's not the low sodium. But again, I reduced the amount of salt in our recipe. So it should balance that out a little bit.
Yep.
So for this, I'm just going to measure out 2 cups, and then I'll have the rest of this container to use for something else. This container is actually 4 cups, so I could just make this recipe again later this week.
I know that the recipe, the ramen noodle skillet, also uses some broth in it. Let me think. I can't remember any others that use broth. I know maybe you could use it with a chili if you wanted to. Yeah, there are plenty of opportunities to use broth. If you're cooking something like a quinoa and you wanted to incorporate a little bit more flavor into that, you could use the rest of your broth for that. So I'm going to take a moment and just talk about fiber. I did kind of allude to this a little bit earlier, but the pumpkin is wonderful, not just for all the vitamins and nutrients that it provides, but also for the great resource of fiber. And you're going to find a lot of fiber in plenty of produce, fruits and vegetables and the like. So fiber helps us feel full, and it helps for cholesterol. So that's an important thing that you want to incorporate in your diet. It's kind of coined as nature's scrub brush. So what that means is as fiber passes through your body, it does push out all the bad things that are in it and carries it through the digestive tract. And so that way you're getting kind of a nice cleaning in the inside. But please note that as you increase your fiber in your diet, you are going to want to increase water and drink more water during your day to kind of help that go through your body. So there are two types of fibers, and we're going to quickly go through the two types. The first one is called soluble fiber, and this dissolves in water and it creates a gel. And again, that improves the digestion. And then the other type is insoluble fiber. So it attracts water within your stool. Both methods of getting fiber are important. It's great to have a good balance of that into your diet. And again, that with the water, it's going to be good for you. You can get fiber not just from fruits and vegetables, but also whole grains as well. So any ways that you want to go about that is going to be great. I don't know if you guys noticed, but whenever you look at like the oatmeal container, it's always like good source of fiber, lowers cholesterol, So that's where that's coming from, that being a whole grain, the oats. So yes, any type of whole grain, fruits, vegetables, eating the skins of fruit is a great way to incorporate more fiber. All of those options are going to be good for you.
All right, so at this point of the soup, all I'm going to do is just kind of wait for it to heat up. Not only is this soup really easy, it's also pretty quick. So this is coming up on the last few steps here. So right now we just need to make sure it's hot. And I am just keeping stirring it. I don't want anything to stick to the bottom, so I'm kind of just dragging my spatula along the bottom of the pan just to keep everything moving and make sure nothing burns.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys, why don't, I asked for some recipes that will be in season already. And also I'm asking, why don't you guys comment below and let us know what your favorite fiber sources are? I already mentioned oatmeal, but in the morning, I love making oatmeal. And I've also found a way that I can incorporate oatmeal in the evening. I like to make a dessert oatmeal. So I just do my oats, and then I like to add a couple of chocolate chips, some almond slices, and then coconut shreds on there. And it's just like having a dessert, I'm telling you. And that's my favorite way to incorporate fiber into my diet.
That would also be really good with some pumpkin.
Ooh, yes.
A little pumpkin spice action.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, the great thing about pumpkins and all of these different kinds of, root vegetables is right now they're coming in season. And with that means they're going to be reasonably priced. So any way that you can add them into your meals, ramp them up, add a little extra variety to it, it's going to be great. And it's going to save you money too.
One of our viewers does say that sounds really good. So great tips.
All right. That looks really good, Julia.
We're coming up on the next step here. And I did also just want to mention, I don't know if anybody that is watching is concerned about this at all, but if you stop right here, this soup is actually completely vegan too. So
wonderful. Wow, I love that versatility there.
Yeah. So I am going to end up adding a little bit of heavy cream just to up the creaminess a little bit of this, give it a little bit more richness. But like I said, if you stop here, it's totally vegan. If you're looking for an alternative, I think it would be really good with like an almond milk coffee creamer.
I
Like
was just
that.
gonna say that. I was gonna say that. Yeah, they have, I've been getting into these lately, but they have a lot of dairy-free and alternative coffee creamers and cream options coming out nowadays. So I've been really into having, soy creamers, almond creamers, and furthermore, cashew milk. I think that would be really nice.
Yeah,
Or if you wanted to, you could incorporate a coconut milk in there.
really good.
That would be really fun. Yeah. If you're going to go more on the sweet side of a pumpkin soup, you could add a little coconut milk, some cinnamon and nutmeg, and that would be fabulous.
All right. So I am starting to get some bubbles here. It might be hard to see on camera. They're little still, but I'm going to go ahead and do our next step here. So this is, like I said, I'm going to be adding a little bit of heavy cream. So this one is heavy whipping cream. If you are looking to lower the fat a little bit in this, you could definitely go with, half and half, even whole milk, or 2% would still add a little bit of extra creaminess. I might skip the skim milk on this because we're looking for creaminess and richness, and since skim milk doesn't have any fat, that really won't do it for us.
For once, we don't want the skim milk, but I do appreciate the way that you recommended having, a whole milk or a 2%. And, guys, that just goes to show you, any way that you're able to reduce the fat, you may not be going all the way to skim. Maybe that's not what your recipe calls for, but it's helpful. So keep that in mind when you're working with this. Wow, that looks yummy as you're mixing that in.
Yeah, just kind of makes it a little bit more voluptuous.
Yeah, nice and rich.
Yeah. All right. So the last thing I'm going to end up adding is maple syrup, and I am a sucker for maple syrup. Absolute sucker for it. So I'm going to be adding a tablespoon here. You can add up to 2 tablespoons and still, it's not going to turn into a sweet soup because we do have those savory spices like the cumin and cayenne pepper and all the onions and garlic. So even if you do go with the 2 tablespoons, you're not going to turn it into dessert.
Right. That looks yummy.
Yeah. All right. So once that gets all stirred in, that's it.
That's it?
We're done.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I always see in recipes and it sounds a little bit more than it is, but this is so quick.
It is. It really is. And, if you've got other things working for dinner, you can certainly let this sit just on a low heat for a little while longer. But if you're rushing and you are running to get out the door or anything like that, it's done here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so I have some pumpkin seeds that I'm going to put on top. These I just, buy at the store. And then let's get a little bit fancy and just do a couple more drips of that. And I can kind of swirl it in.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow.
Make it look like it's in a restaurant.
Yeah, that looks like restaurant quality indeed.
And just a little bit.
Look definitely plays a role in how your food tastes. I know that sounds so silly, but we do eat with our eyes sometimes, and oftentimes we forget that. So those little steps that you can make to make your food look better and feel better, it's going to taste better for certain. Oh, that's awesome, Julia.
We eat with our eyes. So.
Yes. Well, we get a chance to, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, if you're working in some carrots or something like that, if it looks yummy, your kids are going to think that it tastes good, and then there's a higher chance that they'll actually like it.
So we didn't get a chance to cut our squash today. We don't want to go over time. But that is okay, you guys. We do have plans on using squash in the future for future recipes. So when we do that, we'll be sure to take our time and show you how to cut that, show you some ways to cook and prep that, and how you can incorporate that into your diet. Because like I said, it's such a wonderful resource. It's in season, it's cheap right now, and it's got a lot of vitamins, nutrients, and fiber in there.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sajwa and Julia, for that amazing demonstration for today's recipe. Again, we'd like to thank Grace with thekitchen.com for this beautiful recipe that is posted in the description. If you would like that recipe, please visit thekitchen.com. We do actually have a viewer that just chimed in that said maybe recipes with beets would be a good option. So that's something to think about. I know I've got some beets in my garden, so maybe we'll find some recipes with beets. So, all right.
I
So
don't think it's too much with beets. That'd be awesome.
yeah, yep, exactly. So thank you so much for that suggestion. If you do have other suggestions, please let us know. Feel free to comment below. Find us on Facebook, or if you're on YouTube right now, you find us on Facebook and comment there. That would be so great. Also, one last thing, please don't forget to take our survey. It really does help us make our videos a little bit better every time. Here is our survey code one last time. Again, that is E097583. So when you get a chance after this video, please take our survey. And finally, please do join us again next week for another live episode of Cooking Connected. That will be Thursday at 2 p.m. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.